Hello, friends. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I have a great episode for you this week. But before I introduce the guest, let me run a few things by you. First, please follow, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It helps boost the show, grow the audience, and ultimately helps me create the best show for you guys. Additionally, please go follow me on social media, ROYBTZ on Instagram and ROY_BNTZ on Twitter. On Twitter, if you go to the top of the profile, you can subscribe to the newsletter, which gives you access to updates, occasional blog posts, news about guests, future of the show, and just most importantly, just an easy way and convenient way for you to get the podcast into your inbox every single week. Finally, please consider supporting this independent podcast. As you know, I currently do not work with any sponsors or companies. I prefer to keep it independent, and I don't like the interruptions that it causes a conversation on some podcasts. So if you do feel like you get value from this podcast, and if you love the podcast, consider supporting it with a small donation, which you can do through Anchor. As always, there is a link in the show notes. Finally, if you're like me and you love podcasts and maybe you want to start one, I have a link in the show notes for that as well. I have a full tutorial on Gumroad. It covers everything you need to know about how to start a podcast, how to grow it, how to get guests, marketing, executing, literally everything, A to Z, soup to nuts. So if that's something that you're potentially interested in, go check it out. It's very, very affordable. And like I said, it's jam-packed with info. I think we covered everything. Let's move on to the guest. This week I have Jacob Pechenik. He is the founder of Let Us Grow, a super cool company. Well, I'll get into it in a second about what they do, but I wanted to have Jacob on, because Let Us Grow is super interesting, but also the amount of things Jacob has done over his career is super interesting. I'll let him explain it because he's going to do a much better job explaining his life than I can, but I'm very interested in Let Us Grow and similar companies in the indoor growing, at home growing, trying to cut down emission space. Like there's just a whole bunch of companies right now and entrepreneurs rethinking the way we grow our food, rethinking why the current system is just not sustainable long-term, and how can we do better and be just better stewards of the earth. So it was a pleasure having Jacob on, discussing Let Us Grow and the vision that he has for how we can change our food system. And yeah, a really fun conversation. I'm sure you guys are gonna love it. And let's jump right into it. Let me introduce this week's guest, Jacob Pechenik. Enjoy the episode, everyone.
The Genuinely Interested Podcast.
Jacob, thanks for joining the podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Roy.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure. Well, before we get into everything, just want to say happy birthday. I saw that you had your 50th birthday recently, right? A few days ago?
I did. Last week, yeah.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
And how'd you party?
I
celebrate.
Yeah, I celebrated with 8 close friends. Went down to Maui for 4 days, and it was amazing. I mean, I'm so appreciative of my friends coming. I mean, it's hard to get 2 hours, but to get actually 4 days of full, attention and unplugging was amazing. I just have a lot of gratitude for that.
That's awesome. Any insights now that you're alive for 5 decades on this earth? For our younger audience?
Insights. I don't know. Maybe we'll sprinkle insights throughout the podcast. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest at this stage, I don't think I would have gotten to where I am now if I just had gratitude for everything the whole way. I think, a lot of my life, I had all these things I wanted to do and accomplish, and saw the world as an imperfect place, that I wanted to improve. But now I'm really just seeing everything, how perfect everything is, especially my kids and everything that, I have, and nature. And And so, that's where I am right now. But, it's hard to see that always when you're, starting out young.
Yeah, I wish it's unfortunate that the world of the order in which we kind of grow up and evolve is that, in our 20s, we think we know everything. And then in our 30s, we realize we actually didn't know anything in our 20s. And then I'm assuming as the decades progress, it's the same way each time. I'm assuming when I'll get to my 40s, I'll realize how little I knew in my 30s, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I just wish we had that wisdom that we have in our 30s, 40s, 50s when we're younger.
Yeah. And the young bodies. That's that. I forget the saying, but it's like youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah. It's true. When you're so able-bodied in your 20s, like I remember I could do anything. I could drink like a fish, wake up 5, 6 in the morning, no problem, barely any hangover, go to work all day. Now I'll have a beer and I'm like, I need a rest day the next day. And I can't even do it. It's just the body starts to tell you, I can't eat this. I can't drink this. Treat me better. Drink more water. Exercise. It's just you literally feel it. Maybe there's some people who are anomalies and they can keep doing this their entire lives. But the majority of us, the smart ones at least, I think, start listening to your body as you grow older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So Jacob, maybe give people a little bit of insight. Maybe give us a story about who you are and why you're on the podcast.
Wow. I got to think about that one. I think I'm probably on the podcast for Let Us Grow, what I've been doing there. And that's really, I think other than me being a dad and having my 2 kids, I think that's the thing that I'm most proud of in terms of everything I've worked on in my life. I think had probably like 5 different careers. So I didn't, grow up thinking about food system issues. But when I learned I was going to be a dad, I started to look at the food that we were eating. I just wanted to have a perfectly healthy, normal, kid. And I saw chemicals and so many different things and new chemicals and, all this change, and was just wondered, what effects they might have, and said, hey, let's just eat, food as nature intended. And let's go to farmers markets and Whole Foods, the organic aisle, and I was like kind of shocked by the price points of, just regular old fresh food. And, I'd see that. And then I'd see like at the checkout, a 6-pack of Doritos for 99 cents. Like, how did this, come to be? And that led me to learn about farming. And I ultimately invested in a farm that two guys had started in their backyard, and they were looking to grow in a much bigger way. And I wanted to learn about farming, so it made sense. And I ended up getting more involved in ultimately running that farm, and learned all about farming. And farming is really hard. And but the biggest, I think the biggest challenge wasn't so much about how to grow an organic head of lettuce, but it was more like how to get this head of lettuce that you've just grown that's perfect, no chemicals, tastes so good. Yeah. How do you get that to the people? How do you get it to the store? And that's where the product almost gets like corrupted. You have to put it in plastic of some form, like a clamshell, in a box, in a refrigerated truck that takes a long journey, multiple journeys, because it takes multiple stops. And then it's like 10 days old by the time anyone gets it. And then, the story, you go buy something in the grocery store, and then 2 days later, it's kind of gross, in your fridge. So it loses all this nutritional value, flavor, the appeal. And then, 50% goes bad before anyone eats it. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, like why isn't anyone doing anything about this? Like, if we just change the way we delivered fresh food and eliminate the waste, we'd cut the price of fresh food in half. So when I saw that, I really couldn't unsee that anymore. And I changed, I guess that really led to this, new career starting Let Us Grow, which is really rethinking our food system and thinking, can we deliver this, like these essential nutrients that are in fresh food without harvesting the plant many, many, many days before? And so the concept is essentially growing baby plants and growing baby plants like in cities, right? And sending the baby plants at 2 to 3 weeks old to our growers or end consumers to then finish growing them on site in our hydroponic units. And by doing this, you cut down on real estate because you grow 100 times more, plants per square foot if you're only growing babies, so you can grow them in the middle of cities. You cut down on emissions because you're shipping something like that's 1/11th of the size of a mature product, and you don't need refrigeration. Yeah. You cut down on chemicals. You don't need any of it. You cut down, on water use by like 98%. So it's extremely, an extremely efficient way to grow, but it requires the consumer to be an active participant in the growing. And that could seem to be like an Achilles heel of the model, which we call distributed farming. But I think it's actually the greatest asset or the greatest benefit of getting people, re-engaged, right? Reconnected to their food system.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack. I have like 50 questions kind of whizzing through my brain. I guess for people who may not know Let Us Grow, essentially it's a hydroponic farm stand. It's beautiful. It's very visually appealing. It's cool. It's chic. And I'm assuming that's one of the things you probably focused on, because otherwise people probably won't put it in their homes, because it almost looks like a nice piece of furniture with plants involved in it. So that's one aspect. The other aspect I was thinking, like, is this a mostly, or not mostly, but other countries that are big countries probably have a similar issue, like a US problem, because it's so big, right? The US is so vast. Majority of the food is grown in California, right? Or like Mexico or stuff like that. And then it has to be shipped all across the country in trucks or planes or however it gets there. And as you said, by the time it gets there, it's spoiled. It's not as good. It loses nutrients. And maybe a small country like that can grow things across the country. Because also, like, obviously you can grow all these things in New York, right? Or South Dakota. So is it more of an issue in like a place like the US, or I don't know, again, like other big countries, where maybe in Europe, right? Like smaller countries, the food system wouldn't have such issues?
I think it's an issue of industrialization and centralization of farming. And we've had it in so many industries, and we're starting to see that change. I almost liken it to like solar, but for food. Where in energy you have coal plants, at first that are making in one central area where there's a lot of coal, and shipping electricity around the country to, hey, let's generate it right where it's needed. So, in a lot of, let's say for hundreds of thousands of years, right? Everyone on this planet pretty much like grew their own food, right? Or someone in their household did, or someone or their neighbor, did. And then as, we developed and industrialized that, we've outsourced, right, those decisions. And then as real estate became more and more valuable, we pushed those farms further and further away. And I think it made sense to a certain extent, but I think we've way, overdone it. And now we're thinking about, a lot of like the GMOs, a lot of the research is going into how do we make this plant like degrade, or degrade slower or look better after it's already dead, so it can last. They call it like life support, on the truck, from the farm to the, and we think about like all these different chemicals, right, that we need to use because of our monoculture, practices. And we might get like a 3% yield gain, which is huge, right, for that. But there's an immense cost to the environment and an unknown cost to our health. Whereas if we just go back and relocalize food and we rethink where it is grown and much closer to where it's consumed, so many of these problems go away. And you get 100% efficiency, right, in yield with no cost and with no cost to the environment. So I think it's, when I started the company, people thought I was crazy because it's such a standard thing. Like you go to the grocery store twice a week or however often you do to get your produce. But I actually realized it's insane. It is insane to go. The grocery store is like a warehouse with lights and refrigeration, and you're going there to get dead food. Yeah. And that's your fresh food. And it should be coming from much closer. It should be coming from your garden, or it should be coming from a farmer's market, or it should be coming from within, 50 or 100 miles and within 24 hours. So I think we just need to rethink that. And that's, I think, a lot of the lesser, back to the question, a lot of like the lesser developed countries haven't gone to industrialization, and they have healthier, food options. Yeah. The sad thing is like they look to us and they aspire to be like us, and they want the packaged goods and the fast food, and they want shopping malls and they want the stuff. So they're, eroding their farmland and, and developing it. But I think, to rethink how we built our cities, you'd still have a little growing areas, within the cities, to serve, to adequately serve the nutritional needs of the population.
Yeah. The reason I said that, because I'm originally from Israel, and small country, grow a lot of our own, fruits and veggies, and actually grow enough that we export it to Europe. But it's just so different. Like it's like a cucumber there tastes 10 times than a cucumber tastes here, right? It's just so much better. And if it's grown, let's say in the desert or in the north or wherever, by the time it's in the supermarket, it's same day, right? It's picked, brought to the supermarket, maybe there's a distributor or whatever, but like a day or two, and then you get to buy it, and it's delicious and it stays. I mean, actually, I haven't thought about this, but if I have to think about it, I would probably say it lasts a little bit longer than what the produce lasts here, because produce really doesn't last very long here. Like you said, a few days. So that's kind of why I was thinking about that.
Yeah. The food in Israel is amazing.
It's
all
great.
the veggies. I love the Israeli breakfast. Yeah. No, but
there's a lot more veggies too in the actual diet. There's a lot more.
Exactly.
Veggies.
Because, there would be more veggies in the diet here too, if the veggies tasted as good and they were as accessible. And that, I think the problem is like our food system, right, is corrupting those veggies, and the lettuce, doesn't taste good, and the cucumbers don't taste as good, and then people don't want it. And it's this sort of downward spiral. But when you have fresh grown produce, like we have, people will come over and pick like arugula off, and they'll say, whoa, like, is this genetically modified? Like, what did you do to it? It's like, we actually did nothing to it. You just, you just picked it and you just ate it, and my kids will pull, lettuce off my farm stand at home, and they just eat leaves of lettuce, no salad dressing required. A lot of people say, God, it's something I hear that they'll eat without dressing because the food actually has this inherent, flavor and taste. But our system is kind of making it so that we don't even want to eat these things. And it's prioritizing like other shelf stabilized foods or frozen foods or other things, ahead of the fresh food because of the delivery vehicle.
Do you see like a B2B model? Because I've had a couple of people on the podcast, the founder of Smallhold, Andrew Carter, the guy from New Milk, what's his name? Ari Tolwin. And they also do a B2C, but they also have at least they started out or they're planning to do a B2B model where you can either, like, for example, New Milk, you would be able to get freshly squeezed oat milk or almond milk in the supermarket. Smallhold, right? You could get fresh mushrooms in the supermarket. Do you see like some sort of a model like this where there are these hydroponic farm stands or wherever the veggie or fruit is, where people can go and pick up stuff that is grown in the supermarkets versus grown on a farm, shipped to the supermarket in the future?
Yeah. It could be. I'll tell you, when I hear B2B, like I think about, and we actually, when we started, there was we were doing B2B, which would be like selling to restaurants, hotels, other hospitality, where they were growing, for their consumers. Mm-hmm. And I decided, as we were growing and scaling, decided to eliminate that business, primarily because just to focus, it's hard enough to do one thing, so you got to put all your energy and do that. But I decided I want, each farm stand out there to connect directly with a heart, mm-hmm. With a person, because we are doing a huge thing in supplying, produce. But I think that, if we're lucky, we're going to get people to grow 10 to 20% of their food at home. I think they're still going to go to the grocery store. They're still going to go to restaurants. They're still going to go to different places, but they are going to start thinking like a farmer, and the farmers are like stewards of the earth. Yeah. And they're going to feel more empowered to have an opinion on where the other food comes from. So they're say like, oh, I just grew this leafy green with no pesticides, and I'm at the restaurant. Where did this come from? And when they ask the question, then the answers are going to start to matter. Right now, nobody asks the question, so the answers don't matter. And so the food comes from wherever it comes from and takes however long. Yeah. But if people start feeling empowered and asking the questions in 5 or 10 years, the whole food system is going to reconfigure, and it's going to be much better because it's going to respond to consumer voices and consumer dollars. So my goal isn't just, to try to get, for people to like grow at home or to get 10% of their needs met. My goal is to change the entire food system because it doesn't make sense, and it's costing us a lot in our health. It's costing the planet a lot. And I think the way to do it is by empowering the consumer and having them, directly relate to the growing experience and know what it's like to be a farmer. And so that's really where the entirety of my focus is on that connection.
So what do you mean by when you say you want to change the entire food system? Because right now you're focused on mostly leafy greens with lettuce grow. Like, what are the other areas?
Yeah. Well, I think that, if you look at your diet, I think like 10 to 20% should come from, would be like leafy greens, herbs, some veggies that should come from 5 feet, you should, or, 20 feet, I don't know, depending on how big your house is, or 100 feet, but it should be grown pretty close. Right. And then the next 50% could be, and depending on what your diet is, but it'd be things that are, let's say, like harder to grow at home, which might be like potatoes or it could be dairy or, other food, bread, right? Other food items, those should come from, let's say, 50 to 150 miles, right? Be fresh. And then you have other things that might be like more shelf stabilized, things like grains and rice and things, which though that would be, let's say, another, the last 20% or whatever of your diet, those could come from much further distances, and it's okay for them, right, to come. So it's really a relocalization of our food supply and our food system. And there are, enough farms. There's a lot of farms in the country. There's a lot of small farms like the farm I created. But the problem is they don't have this local food system to plug into. You almost need to be one of these a mega farm, an industrialized farm that then has like all the computer systems and supply chain connectivity with the grocery stores and all that. So they're the only ones who can play in that. So it's really, thinking, how do we connect, right, all of these like smaller farms together in a more regional way and make them as a whole as reliable of a producer as the big industrial farm is. Right. And there's a way for it to be done. It's just, we need to invest in it,
A lot of capital, a lot of time. It's unfortunate that the whole system is flipped upside down, right? The least healthy is the most affordable. The most processed is the most affordable. And the organic stuff and the healthy stuff is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7x the price of those things. And, in places where you have food deserts, it's hard to access it. Even here, I see I just moved to Denver last year, and the difference between one supermarket, which is considered less healthy, to Whole Foods, it's 4 times the cost. So if you're
here in LA, we have Erewhon, which is like 4 times above Whole Foods. So
it's insanity. So if you're on a budget and you're trying to stay within that budget, it's very hard to get the good stuff, the organic stuff, the healthy stuff. You're gonna maximize calories and try to stay within that budget because you still feel full, but you're not getting all those nutrients that you should be getting, unfortunately.
No, but the thing is, you mentioned, the cost is much less, and I would just say it's the upfront cost, right, is much less. But I think all in all, the cost is always higher when you're going for that 99 cent, whatever it is, right? That's processed. You're going to have that cost, maybe not, at the cash register, but you're going to have it, in 20 years, 30 years, right? And then you're going to have that cost in lifestyle, right?
That's all hard to
medical.
See that though.
It is.
If you're on a budget, if you're in, 3 kids, a mortgage, all that stuff, and then you're like, 30, you're like, I don't give a shit about 30 years. I just want to make it past this month. It's hard to see that road down and so far.
I'm with you. But that's the thing. That's what I saw is like, if we just grew our own food at home, we would theoretically cut more than half of the cost, because half is just waste. But then if you factor in water, labor, real estate, all these other things, you're going to get the cost much further down. So it's the issue then of time, right? Time and space and experience, right? Because the consumer has a little bit, of work to do. And so that's where we've really tried to cut that out, as much as possible. But I think that if we really, blow this out on a national basis, we are already national, but right now we probably have the equivalent of like 1.7 million square feet of farmland if you take all of our growers, right? And you
that's insane. 1.7 million.
Yeah, 1.7 million square feet of farmland, essentially, right?
Impressive.
Yeah, but the more scale we have, the further and further, we reduce the costs. And I think 5 years from now, it's going to be very clear, to a regular consumer how much more cost efficient it is to grow at home. Right now, it's not clear yet. There's a lot of education, right, that needs to be had. And then we're always working on reducing the cost of the hardware and things, making it lower and lower and more accessible. But there will soon be a time where it's very obvious it's going to be much more, capital efficient.
Yeah.
Better on your pocketbook to grow at home.
When I was I went on YouTube and I put in lettuce grow, and there's a lot of like UGC. And I was wondering, like, who were at least kind of your main evangelists starting out, and then who's the consumer now? Is just the average person, the stay-at-home mom? Like, how did that go from A to B?
Yeah. Well, I would say, we started really, thinking about, I think, people that were in a similar like transition of their life than I was in. I learned I was going to be a dad, and that's really what, woke me up to these issues. So I think it's new parents, specifically new moms. It's people who are already also like aware, a lot of people who already support and go to farmers markets, right? Where, they care about, supporting their communities, and they care about the food, right, that they eat. There are a lot of there's a lot of like the tech bros. I think that's like a category that also like hackers and stuff that find the system and, and love that. And then like baby boomers, there's a lot of people who've more grew up having a garden.
Yeah.
They love that. But now they're back, gives out, and it's just a lot of labor, right? It's a lot of work. So, but I was reading reviews on our Facebook community group yesterday, and there was like a cancer survivor, and that couldn't eat, all these different types of food and nothing with chemicals. So they chose to grow their food and let us grow. And they said it was like the only, from a taste wise, it's like the only thing that they wanted. And,
oh, wow.
And there were, other people who talked about recently losing loved ones due to COVID or other things, and actually, turning to growing for like that connection and grieving, through that process. So I no longer really say there's like one type, of person. It's really, I guess I'd say if you eat food, then you're the type of person that this would be great for.
Earlier you said you had like 5 careers. I remembered I wanted to ask you about that, but I got swept up in other things. What were some of the things you were doing prior to Let Us Grow?
Yeah. So when I was 14, I got into trading.
14?
Yeah. 14. Okay. I started at a young age. And
what drew you to trading other than the obvious making money?
Yeah. I mean, at the time, I didn't really know, anything about it. And it was another student, at school, told me something, his dad said, I don't know if he heard his dad say some company's going to have good earnings. So I'm not exactly sure if this was inside information or not, but anyway, I ended up calling my dad. I think I called him from school and I was like, Dad, will you buy this stock will you put my savings and buy the stock for me? So he bought it. Yeah, he bought it. And I'd call like the actual company. I don't know how, every time I could get out of class and go to the payphone and call, I'd ask what the stock price was. And it went up. And I sold and I made like $200. And
yeah, at 14, that's a lot.
It's still a lot now, but I think, I don't know, back then it was in the '80s. Yeah, it was in the '80s. So who knows? That was maybe like $1,000 or something. I don't know. But
14 to 200, you're balling.
Yeah, exactly. So I got hooked, and then I just started, learning, all about stocks. And then I went to college and got a degree in chemical engineering. I went to MIT, and I was like trading the whole time. So I was like half in school, half still looking at stocks. And then after that, after I graduated, instead of doing a regular job, I started my own like trading fund.
Okay.
And I did that for a while, or maybe like 18 months or so, until I lost all my money. That's when I learned about money management skills. And so I stopped that, and I went and got like my first real job. And I was working for a software company. So I had to brush up on my programming skills, which I didn't really have, but I had to do some programming, at MIT. So I did that for a while. And at that company, the internet was just like coming out, and not everyone, had it, but I was one of the few employees that also had to talk to customers. So I actually had internet access, and I was trying to trade to make the money back, on the side. But there was no like website where you could actually get all the information you needed. And I had to go to like 5 or 6 different websites. So the idea I had was to create a new, like a trading platform that would be for online, trading stocks and options. And right before launching, I was like, stocks and options are easy. We should do it so you could trade any product, because I think sometime down the road, everything's going to be traded, online. So that led me to create my first like real company. The trading thing I did, I was like my own employee. It was an employee of one, which was me. But this company was called Tech Trader, and I think we got up to about a little over 100 employees. And it was like, it ended up being like a B2B marketplace technology company.
Okay. What year was this?
That was launched that in 97.
Oh, wow. Super early.
Yeah. Super early. Okay. Web 1.0.
Web 1.0. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I was like 25, there's 100 employees. It was a huge growth driver, right? For me, just to go through so much. I learned a ton.
Yeah. What was it like having 100 people underneath you? It was that's probably kind of wild at 25.
Yeah. I mean, it's more wild thinking about it now.
Yeah.
And if a 25-year-old came to me and said, give me all this money and I want to go hire 100 people, I'd be like, what? Are you crazy? And it's wild, even me thinking 50, being 50, having 100 employees. So, but at the time, again, I didn't have any perspective to really even think it was wild. It was just what I was doing. And so
you think you're invincible at 25?
Yeah. But I was invincible. I don't know what the opposite of invincible. There was a big, market downturn 2001, and it affected us. And so we spun out, part of the company, but most of it we had to wind down, and wasn't fun, at all. And I had some ideas of where the web was going. And I went to visit a friend from MIT who I got into trading. And he was trading weather derivatives, which I thought was really fascinating. And so the weather derivatives is a financial product It's not an insurance product, but it's kind of, it gives you a hedge based off of like a measured weather event. So it's almost like taking, like if you bet on sports, it's almost like taking an over under, on the outcome of a game. So
weather?
But on weather, yeah.
So like a tornado, a massive tornado is going to hit Kansas in July.
It would be like normal events. So it would be just based on the temperature or the amount of precipitation. So not something that would create a loss. So an example, let's say we could think about like Disneyland, right? So it seems like it never rains here. It hasn't rained in a long time. So you could pretty much rely on going to Disneyland, right? All the time. Mm-hmm. But if it happened to rain for a whole month of June, right? Or for a week of June, it would have a pretty big impact on Disneyland earnings, right? And then they'd, report quarterly earnings and there'd be, the weather did this. It was a big hit and their stock would go down.
I understand.
But instead, if they bought they bought June rain, and they bought it at, let's say, 2 inches, right? And then they, let's say, got $1 million a degree over 2 inches. So if it didn't rain, no problem. They'd lose whatever they paid and for that contract. But then if it rained, let's say 5 inches, they had made 3 inches, right? Because they bought it at 2, went to 5, and then they'd get however $1 million per inch. We said, I can't remember. But so that would be one side. And then you need to find the other side who would actually, want it to rain, right? So
people are making a killing off of this.
Well, I built a platform that helped, match these people right together, and we did over $1 trillion of weather trading. 40% of the U.S. economy, is at risk due to weather in some way. So many companies have this exposure, and so it's just a way, instead of rolling the dice and saying, is it going to be hot or cold, rain or not, of just actually hedging that. Even the World Bank was like buying contracts, I think, for like Morocco or, other countries where they would have, a harvest, they'd have like a couple of years of great harvest and then let's say 6 years of drought and nothing. So in that case, if they sold rain, and it didn't rain, then they would, make money, and then they could compensate the farmers or, buy, import, right, necessary grains and produce. So anyway, I built a system that helped facilitate that. And then we rolled it out to other products beyond energy. So it was like the whole energy complex in like 50 different markets. And then I sold that company to the parent company of the New York Stock Exchange. And after that, I moved into film, which was a huge shift.
You were a film producer, right?
I was, finance, mostly finance, and then and production. And I was like,
that's quite the shift.
It is. On the trading, the two other companies were trading, but it was all based on software. And what made the last one so successful, I think, is because I sat with, one, I was a trader, I understood the issues, but then I would sit with all the traders and watch every click they made, and understood every issue that they had. And it was really had a lot of connection and empathy, with their needs. And I made the software. It wasn't like, oh, this is how it should be. Let me just put something out there, which wouldn't hook into their day-to-day flow that they already had. So it was really understanding that. And when I left and I was thinking about what to do next, someone just so happened to invite me to a film screening. And I watched this movie And then afterwards, the director and the producers got up and they started asking all these questions. Did you understand what's going on? What did you think of the story? Did you relate to the characters? And it just like clicked in me that it's like you just need to connect with the audience, very well. And if you do that, you're going to move someone, you're going to have this effect. And I don't know, in that moment, I'm like, film seems so much more fun than making software. Okay. And instead of making software that'll affect like 5,000 lives, I can make a film that's going to affect 5 million lives. And so I just thought it seemed like the same thing I was doing. I was just shifting right to another platform in a way. And the idea was I just wanted to make movies that cause people to like open their mind. The name of my company, I called it Venture Forth. So it's like just venture forth, in your thought process. But I wasn't really that confident in my creative abilities because I wasn't a film guy. I didn't even like watch more than 4 movies a year, unless if I was on a plane. So it was really, learning a lot. So what I did know I was good at was financing. So I worked a lot like on the structuring and, financing side. And then I got more and more comfortable with the creative. But by the time I was really flexing my, creative muscle, I was kind of worn out with the industry because I financed or produced 35 films in 5 years, and it was 35. A lot.
Wow.
Yeah. So
what's the process of that? Do you start up a company, you get pitched certain movies, or do you go and do you try to, because you're new, as you said, it's not like you have like 30 years in this industry. Like what's the process? Do you go try to find people? Do you go try to find projects? Do you get pitched? Are both true? Something else?
All of the above. Everything. All of the above. Everything and nothing.
Okay.
I mean, well, I did 35, and I'll tell you, every single one was different, came in a different way, was structured in a different way. But I think it was how do you break into Hollywood? That's another way of looking at it. I think there's people who get in at the bottom and then they work their way up, many, many, many years. And I think that's a grind, and then those people how did you know nothing about film? And all of a sudden, you're working with these, big distributors and doing that. And it was a lot easier for me to move laterally, to make it in Wall Street and then, shift over. But I think it was just lucky. I think one of the first films or second films I did, I was put in touch with another company that was financing, and the principals there I learned a lot and then became best friends with, and then we ended up looking at a lot of deals and a lot of projects together. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that really, that relationship really led me into a lot.
You kind of go against conventional wisdom because majority of the people I know or follow on social media that are very successful tend to stay in one lane. And they're like, okay, I'm really good at whatever marketplaces or fintech or whatever it is. And I'm going to stay in this, and I'm going to build companies and invest in the type of companies that I know. But you just kind of jump, and you've had success in all of them. Right, even if doesn't matter, even if you end up shutting a company, whatever, it's still part of the process. But you just, it seems like your career has gone against some of what people would look at as conventional wisdom.
It is against conventional wisdom, but I would argue it's actually the same lane that I've been in.
You think?
It's I look at, because my kids are in school, and, the things that I learned was math, history. I can't even remember the other subjects, but anyway, there's these vertical, subjects.
Yeah.
But but is that the stuff that matters in life? It's like leadership, interpersonal skills, these other kind of general, or they're more like these horizontal, abilities. And so for me, like, yeah, there wasn't like one vertical like that I've been interested in, but it's really every one of these industries that I looked at when I first saw it, I was like, why do they work the way they work?
Yeah.
This makes no sense. And it was easy for me because I was a kid and I didn't know better, but I was relatively optimistic and confident. So I felt like I could challenge the status quo. And in each one of these, I think I really focus on an industry level shift to how it worked, and was, had enough, I guess, confidence, right, to give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
And once that change happens, like in the trading platform, we got like 98% market share, once that happens,
98.
And then, it was like 98, and then not just in weather, but in like gas and crude. And so it's still, and there's people still, actively trading on it in a lot of volume. But
you were the Bezos of your time.
I guess, I don't know.
As far as market share,
I didn't say that. Yeah. But then it's like, once the vision that you have is out there, and it's like, okay, well, now I want to, I never really thought I want to go fix something else. It was just like, okay, well, now I want to do something I enjoy, Sure. I've always enjoyed the things at the beginning, but towards the end, then it becomes, it's like, you're creating less and less. Right. And you're operating, scaling more and more. And then I just sort of dig into something else I'm interested in, and then start to uncover stuff that doesn't make sense, and then I just start digging. And then all of a sudden I have a new career trying to fix something. So I would say that's probably like the common through line. But yeah, all the industries have changed.
Well, there's kind of two schools of thought, right? There's the one where people just want to make money, like, "Ooh, this is a good idea. We can capitalize on this market. We see a hole here, whatever, and I think we can make a lot of money. Exit in 5 years, whatever." And then the other school of thought is, I really want to do something I'm passionate about, something I love, something with deep meaning that potentially helps others. And I don't know. I don't think either one is bad or good. But it seems like, you can make money and you have a great product. There's nothing wrong with that. Not everyone also finds their passion always. Like, some people just don't know. So starting something, as long as it's not something horrific, right? Like, as long as it's like, you're not, I don't know, creating poison. But it seems like originally you were more in the first one, where you were just like, oh, this is a good idea, I can create, and now it seems like you're more in the second school of thought, where I really want to create a legacy, something that is going to be good for everyone.
Yeah, that could be, I think it's hard to go back to where I was, right? But I think I was lucky enough that those early businesses were successful enough that then gave me, confidence, but also, I made enough from them to feel secure about my future. And I think once you're secure, then it's easier to say, I'm not worried about money. I want to make a difference. And, and it's hard. There are a lot of people who do, they get out of college, or they don't go to college, they go to the Peace Corps, and they're making a difference, from day one. And that's amazing. And I would probably bet that a lot of those people find their passion and then do apply that passion to something, and they will do well, right? Mm-hmm. Later on in life. But some people, right, are focused more on the the achievement, right, of the money, right, or of the security or that. So I definitely like set out to, I think I just always had some confidence that it would come, so I was really more set out to prove myself, I guess, and to do something big. Wasn't really thinking about the money of it as much, but I always just thought the money would come. But now I pretty much make most of my decisions despite the money, like regardless of the money.
Yeah.
And that's nice. I am, yeah. And I have the luxury that I don't need to, worry about it as much. So I don't know what it would be like, if I didn't, but that's where I am. And I'm happy that I don't need to worry. I don't need to think about that. I am 100% mission driven.
What is let's talk a little bit about Lettuce Grow. What's the process? So let's say I'm the end consumer. I'm sitting at home on my computer and I'm ordering the farm stand. What's the process of getting it, I don't know, putting it together, setting it up, getting regular orders or seeds or however the process happens? Can you walk us through it?
Sure. Yeah. So if you're at home, you go to our website, lettucegrow.com. And the best thing is to fill out a survey. It's quick and easy, but it's just, we figure out how many people live in your household, where do you live, will you be able to grow outdoors or indoors, what you like to eat. And then we're going to recommend a size for you and a whole basket of plants, which then you could modify. And then we're going to send out the unit, and we're going to send out a whole bunch of baby plants to you. The farm stand itself is really easy to set up. You can do it in, I think we say 30 minutes, but I can do it in about 5. Kids can do it. You don't need tools, or anything. So I'd say good 15 minutes, let's say. So it's pretty quick setup. You fill the tank with water, you add nutrients, you plug it in, and it runs on the same power of a light bulb. So there's a pump and it goes on every so often and waters the plants. And then we have an app that will remind you to add water each week. It'll tell you exactly how much nutrients to add each week, because we know what you're growing and how much of it you're growing. And then the app will also tell you when things are ready to be harvested, and we'll tell you recipes to make. So each week, the maintenance duty is really adding water, adding nutrients. We say 5 minutes, and it's just checking your plants, making sure everything looks right, looks good. And if you think something doesn't look good, you take a picture, send it in to our customer care team, send it to our community group, which is very active. Or you could even if there's something you think is more serious, you could FaceTime with our horticulturists. So we pretty much stay, very connected. And and it's surprisingly low, time commitment. I say 5 minutes a week, but you could set one up and go out of town for 3 weeks, come back, and you've got this you're ready to do full harvest and do nothing, without almost any work. So it's pretty amazing.
Do most people use it, I'm assuming, indoors, right? Not outdoors?
About 60% are outdoor, 40% indoor.
Oh,
and
really?
Then some people go outdoor. Let's say you're in Massachusetts, you go outdoor during, the spring, late spring and summer, early fall, and then you go indoor, during the winter. So it's a modular system. So you could start small. If you want to grow just 12 plants, it's 2 levels, or you could go up to 6 levels and do 36 plants, and you could add levels. It just takes 30 seconds to add a level. And you could also add lights whenever everything twist locks. So, so you can change the size, change the location, add lights very easily. It's like a portable, extendable garden.
Yeah. What outside? How do they? Because it would have to be connected to electricity, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then how would they avoid like pests and stuff like that, like bugs?
Yeah. Well, one, it's kind of like us, if you're healthy, you could actually have dinner with a friend who's got a cold and you're not going to get it because you're healthy. If you're run down, you might get that cold. So the first thing is that the seedlings come to you very healthy. And then if you follow, you add the water and you add the nutrients, we're going to take care of the plant. So they're going to be pretty resilient. Then, but then if there happens to be a sick plant nearby that has bugs, you could get those bugs. But you also have, when you're outdoor, you have beneficial insects, right? There's this whole like ecosystem really that you will see evolve that pretty much, takes care of itself. Sometimes the actual issues could be harder to deal with indoors because people bring in pests on their shoes in different ways. So pests come in, but you don't have all the other beneficial insects to eat the little, insects. So, but we have a whole, set of protocols and like tips, like what to look out for. So if you see, certain spots or little like holes in your leaves, then we could say, okay, this is what it is. This is where to look for it. Here's some, organic ways, right, to deal with those things. So we have like tips for pretty much everything.
Yeah, I'm a complete novice. I lived before I came to Denver. I lived in Connecticut for a year, and we had a big outside area. So I was composting not well, and then we were growing some of the things that were just kind of naturally growing, like mint and a couple other things, and then once in a while some potatoes or a couple other things. And I kept losing to the bunnies. The bunnies ate all our stuff, all our everything we grew. The bunnies and the chipmunks and squirrels, they feasted on it. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to keep growing this for you guys. It's
frustrating. Yeah.
I'm just going to keep growing it for you guys because you're the end consumer as far as I'm concerned right now.
That's funny.
Yeah. It's unbelievable how if you go a couple of hours outside of New York City, which is like, like Hartford, West Hartford, Connecticut, for example, the amount of wildlife I saw there in a year, I don't think I've seen my entire life. I'm talking backyard wildlife, deer, bears, bobcats.
Bears, wow.
Literally had a black bear one morning just knock on our window as we're sitting in the sunroom. And you look back and you see this like 400-pound, 300-pound, whatever black bear. So it was a really fun experience.
Wow. Yeah, that's lucky.
I see. I think like people can't see, but like in the background is all the different, or some of the plants that you're growing.
Yeah. So in the
amazing.
background, you can see I've got a bunch of outdoor stands, and we've got, I don't know if you can see, but we've got like zucchini on them that are as long as my forearm or bigger. We've got a lot of tomatoes, peppers, and then so many different types of lettuces. We have a lot of like heat tolerant lettuces because it's crazy hot summer now. Yeah. Herbs. We have like 6 different types of basil.
Basil's such a tough one. Basil, every time I get it from the supermarket, next day it dies. 2 days max. Like I can't keep basil. I think I need to buy a lettuce grow stand.
We need to get you one.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, Jacob, I think our time is up today. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Roy.
Where can people find you on social media? Where can they buy Lettuce Grow?
Yeah. Well, you can go to lettucegrow.com. It's spelled like lettuce, like a head of lettuce, LETTUCE, grow. And that's our Instagram handle. And my personal handle is not that interesting, but I'm Jacob Pechenik. So
all right, cool, man. I appreciate your time. Guys, go check it out. Let Us Grow is amazing. And I'm very interested in the space. As you know, I've had a bunch of people that are doing similar things in different spaces. So I'll try to have more people on. And Jacob, thanks again for your time. This was awesome, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Roy. Appreciate